Buongiorno!
Buongiorno! Ladies and gentlemen, you know him, you love him, you've seen him on stage with us last year, and now here he is, an official new member of Dream Theater, Mr. Jordan Rudess.
Wow.
Welcome aboard, Jordan. Are you happy with the sessions for the new album?
Oh, we're having a wonderful time playing music for our friends.
All right.
Yes,
Wow.
folks.
Well, there's Jordan. We're very happy to have him aboard. Jordan, as you know, did 2 incredible Liquid Tension experiment albums with us, and now to have him as a full-time Dream Theater member, it's exceeding our wildest expectations.
Wow.
That was awesome.
A blast from the past. I remember that vividly, actually. That was at Bear Tracks, actually. That was while we were recording Scenes from Memory.
Right, totally. Hey, I want to do a formal introduction here. Wait a minute.
I just enjoyed that so much.
Yeah,
I'm
me
sorry.
too. That was awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen out there in Facebook and YouTube and Patreon land, I've been looking forward to today because it's always really fun to hang out with my very longtime friend and musical comrade. We recently had the great pleasure, no exaggeration, maybe double great pleasure, of working together in the studio for a new Liquid Tension experiment album, which is pretty amazing because it was more than 20 years. So, we reconnected then. The reality is that Mike and I have stayed in touch through all these years, and we've been kind of waiting for the opportunity for the sky to open up and, just to allow us to do this. And we did, and we're happy. For those of you who I think many of you out there do, we also got together. We played our lovely instrumentally on the Prague cruise. So, we've been remaining connected, but of course, getting together for this new chapter of Liquid Tension has been amazing and opened up the next chapter, shall we say, of our musical lives. Anyway, Mike has done too many things for me to list, and I think there's so many things that even the man with the best memory that I know, Mr. Mike Portnoy, tells me that he is maybe starting to not keep track of every little detail, which I find amazing. But we're going to have some fun. We can reminisce. We can tell you a little bit about the Liquid Tension stuff, and we'll certainly take some questions and all that. And I should say before we start chatting that after about 10 minutes or so of talking, we are going to close it down because we're going to move to my Patreon-only format because, music isn't free. Musicians have to survive and eat, and Spotify doesn't really pay the bills. So we're all coming. We love all you guys. We want to play music for you. We want to entertain you. It's in our hearts, but we also have to make a living. And we'll probably talk about that too. So without further ado, Mr. Mike Portnoy. Hello, Mike. How's it going, man?
Hey, Jordan. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no.
All right, I want to comment on that clip.
Go ahead. All yours.
I remember it vividly. That was we were making Scenes from Memory. And probably around 22 years ago, right about now, because it was that's when my son Max was born, and he just had his 22nd birthday a few days ago. So, but the 2 things that just struck me seeing that, well, first of all, how different we both look. You had no beard and long hair,
right?
And then I had short hair and a very, very little beard. And also the 2 things I noticed about myself, first of all, my teeth were completely crooked. I did Invisalign over the last couple of years. So,
nice. Yeah.
But seeing that video with the camera like right up on me, I was like, holy shit. I had forgotten that my teeth were that crooked. And also the other thing that struck me was my New York accent. 'Cause I've been in Pennsylvania for like 17 or 18 years now, but I was still in New York at that point.
Yeah.
And hearing my accent right there really struck me. I was like, oh my God, like, wow. But man, it's crazy how I remember that like it was yesterday, but watching the clip, it's like, wow, that's over 2 decades ago.
Time is so weird. Like when we were in the studio just the other week, it was like no time passed at all. I mean, it just, you have things in your life that kind of change your perception about what time really means to us. And that was mind-blowing. It really affected me, because walking into the studio and being there with you, and we haven't been in the studio together in what, like 11 years or 12 years, when you would remember, whenever it was. And also Tony. I mean, we hadn't been in the studio with him in over 20 years. And we walked in, and within seconds, we were just jamming. Like it was just like the next day or the next week. I mean, literally, it was so crazy.
I mean, that coming back together to do the LTE sessions last summer hit on two levels. The first level was the four of us. The four of us hadn't been in a studio together in 22 years. And when the last time we made that second LTE album, our kids were just getting born, and now they're full, they're all adults. So, but then there was the other thing about the other elephant in the room, that me, you, and John hadn't been together, in, I guess, 10 or 11 years. And that was like pretty surreal. But it, like you said, the minute we started playing, it was like not a day had passed. It just felt so natural, so comfortable,
Right. It was crazy. I mean, it wasn't, you'd think that we'd have to almost like reestablish our roles or something like that, or find out where everybody's at, or none of that. It was like not even, it was just like the moment we walked into the room, we were go, go, go. And everybody took their place in the chemistry that we all have. And we just did it. And I guess that's, what the magic really is. And
I found that even, all those years we were together in Dream Theater, I found the chemistry for LTE and the chemistry for Dream Theater between all of us, it's a little bit of a different chemistry too, because it's a different way of writing and working. With Dream Theater, there's vocals. You have to write with vocals in mind. Whereas LTE, it's instrumental. So it's a whole different way of writing. It's also very, very improvisationally based. Right. So there's that element. There's also, the keyboards are I think, like with LTE, when we did those first two albums, you were free to do whatever, and it was like that was our chance to work with you, and and it was like, man, just whatever you want, Jordan, go for it. But then once you came into Dream Theater, it's like, well, okay, it's kind of a different formula that you kind of got to find your place, and your the dynamic is a little different, but the LTE dynamic is so free and open. There are no rules with LTE.
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing about. That's why it's so important for us to do those albums. I mean, maybe dare I say, maybe even more important for me, because I don't have a lot of other side like band things. Although, of course, I make a lot of music on my own. But just going in a room with a band and doing something different that's that free is like, as much as I enjoy my time with Dream Theater, it's like therapy. Because the keyboards I get to do whatever I want. Now, I will say, when I heard the first mix come off the press, as you know, I was basically in shock. I don't think our fans out there know what happened. I'll tell this in as nice a way as possible. So I'm usually pretty mellow. I know Mike and John are totally like on these things, and there's some things I just don't need to worry about. So I was pretty casual about listening to any of the mixes, figuring, the guys will make sure it sounds good. So I happened to see while the mixes were coming back, the first mix was coming back, I just saw my email, and John Petrucci wrote to to Rich, who is the engineer, Rich Mauser. He said, you should turn the keyboards up a little bit. And I went, wait a minute. The guitar player who has the wall of sound as big as my house is telling him to turn up the keyboards. I better give this a listen. So I thought, well, that's going to be nothing. It'll sound fine. I listened to it. I swear to God, I could not hear the keyboards at all. I was like, oh shit. And I didn't know what to, I was in shock. I was like, how the hell did this happen? Because Rich Mauser is the master of progressive rock engineering. Everything is always perfectly in balance. So to make a longer story short, because there's a lot to talk about, basically what happened was, I think John was a little bit being mindful, careful, paying attention to the fact that he needed his guitar tone to be, the Petrucci sound. And I think he expressed to Rich that, hey, make sure my guitar really rocks, and Rich interpreted that as, oh my God, I got to make sure that the guitar is the king here. So.
I'll tell you my perspective on that. Yeah, there is a bit of a backstory. Okay. Because when we did the first two LTE albums, those were mixed by Kevin Shirley, who John and I were working with at that time. We had done Falling Into Infinity. So we trusted Kevin, but Kevin always had a Kevin Shirley always did a big wall of sound, big guitar-oriented mixes. So this time around, when we started talking about mixers for LTE3, we threw out a bunch of names, and I know John wanted to keep the mixer separate from anything that Dream Theater currently uses or separate from anything I use with any of my bands. But for whatever reason, there were a few mixers that were unavailable, and Rich Mauser was eventually suggested by Thomas Waber. And Rich does all my prog stuff. He does Flying Colors, Transatlantic, Neil Morse Band. I know he's great with keyboards. He's great with just real great organic sounds. But Thomas Waber and I were concerned how John was going to take to Rich, because Rich was never like a wall of guitar sound kind of guy. So I got a feeling Thomas Waber probably prepped Rich Mauser and said, look, we got to convince John. We need that big wall of guitars. So I think Rich probably overcompensated for it with that initial mix, and just to get John feeling comfortable.
Oh God, he was so comfortable he wanted the keyboards turned up.
I think even John was probably surprised by it. Like, wait, where are the keyboards? So I think once John was on board and happy with Rich, then it was like, okay, now let's round this out and get Jordan where he needs to be.
Yeah, Rich did an unbelievable job. It sounds, I love the mixes. It's perfect. It ended up well, but I've never been so frightened by a first mix. It was like a big lesson for me. Like, always listen to the mix.
Right.
So wow.
But I think Rich did a great job. I mean, it's unfortunate that the album isn't out that we could openly talk about it. In fact, I know we originally scheduled this so it would precede the release by maybe only a week or so, and since then we've had to delay it a few weeks, so we're still about a month away. But there's a lot we could talk about even without. But I think people don't even know that Rich Mauser mixed it until now, which is cool. So, but yeah, it was Rich, and he's just great with everything he touches, and nobody knows prog better than him. So the kind of improvisational side of LTE, that is a big part of LTE. I mean, that's right up his alley,
Right, totally. I'm thinking, speaking of the new LTE album, the Rhapsody is one of my favorite things. I don't know, for some reason it's a real standout for me of all the stuff we did. Which is funny because, we didn't write that, we arranged it. And I love what we wrote, but the Rhapsody was so cool. And in interviews, I tell people that, the reality is when you came up with the idea to do the Rhapsody, even at first to do it, like when we played the live shows, I was kind of like, my feelings like, oh my God, because I'm thinking about where's the music, where are all the sounds how am I going to do that? And all these realities start hitting my head. But meanwhile, it was great fun to do live. We had a great time and, got through the work. But this time, flashback just a little bit and you were like, guys, we should do Rhapsody in Blue on the album. And I'm like, oh my God, don't say that. Because I'm thinking, where's the music? Where's my notation? Where's my music? How does the song go?
You're having Mike Portnoy flashbacks. Like, oh no, now he's going to want to cover an entire like Genesis album,
Totally. And I was like, the thing is, I look for my music, I look for my sounds and all kind of the parts I need to make it happen. And after I took a few deep breaths and I think I found the PDF file of the music and I relaxed to the idea of doing it, of course, it became a really amazing project. And I tell people I had we had a great time. I personally had an incredible time in my studio because I did my keyboard parts at home, doing all the orchestration. I'd use like orchestral sounds, I'd use steel drum sounds, I'd use synthesizers and choirs and strings, all the stuff. And it was really, really it was such a cool project.
Well, for that reason alone.
Uh-oh.
The studio version of this.
Freezing up a little bit, yeah. We're having a freeze. Uh-oh. If you guys can hear me out there in Radio Land, we'll try to deal with that.
It's on Mike's end.
Yeah, you might want to call back in. Is anybody else having an issue with the internet in the Facebook, YouTube world over there?
They're all saying he's frozen.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there he goes.
Hey.
Oh, here you are. You froze for a minute.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. We missed what you were saying about the Rhapsody after you were going to chime in and say your perspective, but it all
Right.
got frozen.
Well, I think it was a good idea to to record a studio version of it because we had only played it live in 2008. Not everybody got to hear it or experience it, but also, like you just mentioned, you were able to properly orchestrate a studio version. So you were able to go places with the sounds and all these different, sonic, applications. I want to quickly divulge how we recorded it, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Because
please.
it's a funny story for the people out there that we had composed, I think, 4 songs for LTE3, and then we had done a bunch of jams, but we knew we wanted to also do Rhapsody in Blue, but it was like, man, it's going to take forever to relearn it, and you're going to have to reprogram it.
Yes.
So the way we actually did it is I played my drums to the live version from LA. So Jimmy T and myself literally went through the click, created a click track map to the live version. Then I played my drums to the live version, and then after that, you guys did all your orchestrations on your own. But there's a very funny thing at the end of the studio version. We hit the final chord, and then you hear me say in the studio, "Thank you very much." Oh, the roar of the crowd. That's because in my headphones, I'm hearing the audience applauding to our final chord from the live version. So when people hear the studio version and wonder what the hell's going on there, that's because in my ears, I'm hearing the LA audience applauding, the end of the song.
Right, yeah, that's so funny. That's great. Hey, we are going to take our conversation to Patreon. So I just want to take a second to say thank you to everybody on YouTube and Facebook for watching. Please do join us over in the Patreon world. I think you'll enjoy being part of that community. A lot of cool things happening. And and thanks so much for watching this today. And we're going to continue our conversation, and we'll see you guys at some point on the road and on Patreon. Okay. We're making the switch. See if you can feel it. The engineer will give us the word when we're totally moved to the other universe. Okay. Very good. So here we are.
Okay, now we could really we could spill the dirt now.
Yeah, you want to tell the truth about what really happened?
Yeah, you have to be a Patreon member if you really want the good stuff.
That's it. Yes, exactly. We're not giving this stuff away. No way. So so my Patreon crowd is awesome. A more dedicated, shall we say, audience of people, and we're going to allow them to ask questions as well. And I think before we do that,
There are a lot of questions.
there's a lot of questions. But
Wow, you're brave.
We're gonna run another video for them just for some fun. We'll take a break. Here we go.
What do you want to show?
Oh, what do we want to show? What are my choices? I forget.
Duo? Okay, let's just do a little duo.
Yeah, our duo thing. That'd be
We've
cool.
all seen the
Okay. The engineer, who's Danielle, as you know, is queuing it up as we speak. There we go.
I haven't seen this in years.
Me neither.
Wow, that's great.
Oh my God.
That's great.
That was so cool to see.
I haven't seen that in so long. Wow. And if I remember correctly, Zappa ends up coming on the screens towards the climax, conducting us.
Oh, that's what I don't. Well, yeah.
Yeah, there's footage of Zappa conducting us that it builds to.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, the Zappa influence. I mean, you're, as many people know, much more into Zappa. So much about him and the whole thing. It's something that I always enjoyed and something that I enjoy as well. And I often remember when we were in the studio and we were writing Beyond This Life, and you had this kind of vision about this one particular part, and you were like, "Oh, it'd be really cool, like if we could do like a Zappa kind of thing." And I was like, I took it, took it on. I was like, "Yeah, okay, I get a chance to like try to write a little bit like a Zappa thing." And I went up to that funny loft space that's at Bearsville, and I kind of like took my music paper and I wrote this crazy thing, and then whatever, a couple hours later emerged, and I was like, well, how's this?
Right? And you nailed it. But yeah, that's where that came from. And then the live version, when we decided to expand it, it was like, well, let's totally get the Zappa thing going. And actually we had to get clearance to use that footage of Zappa for the Live at Budokan DVD. And that was the first time I ever had any connection with the family, and I got to know the family through that. And then ultimately, we ended up taking Dweezil out with us in 2009 and 10. But yeah, I loved. That was one of the things. Once you came into Dream Theater after the 2 LTE albums, the improvisational stuff was such a big part of the first 2 LTE albums that we wanted to incorporate that into Dream Theater. It's like, because you, me, and John really tapped into that with LTE. So it's like, let's bring that into Dream Theater. And for those first couple tours, when you first came into the band, we would have moments in the show that were just always improv moments that we would just do anything. And I love that we were able to bring that aspect into the band.
Absolutely. I honestly miss that. And I often feel like I could be in a band that just walked on stage and improvised the whole time.
Right.
And that's like my nature, if you will. I
mean, LTE is very much like that. If you look at, the 2 kind of side Liquid Trio experiment things, one was me, you, and Tony just jamming for an hour or whatever, or hours, days in the studio when John had to go back because Kiara was being born. And we ended up putting at least an hour's worth of those jams out on CD years later.
Right.
And then there was the live one where your keyboard broke in Chicago. So me, John, and Tony ended up jamming for an hour. But yeah, that's when we do it with LTE, even with the tour in 2008, there were always 2 segments in the show that were complete improv, and in both cases we would go on for 10, 15, 20 minutes on these tangents, and nothing discussed or pre-planned. It was completely on the fly, reactionary, and and I think all 4 of us in LT are really good listeners, and responding to and reacting to other people's things. Maybe you'll play something and we'll latch onto it, and then the guitar will start something and then we latch onto it. And that's one aspect of music that I just absolutely love. It's totally being in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about improvisation so much in my musical life and, interviews and teaching, because to me, that connection of kind of like, it's almost like, words coming out. It's like your musical vocabulary, and you're saying something and it's happening just like we're talking now. We don't have a script. We're just, expressing. And I feel that when I'm, sitting down at the piano, or when I'm, improvising, which could be like, you think of it as composing as well, so that's a really important thing. I think that's a really important element of making music, which, you and I have done a lot together. Matter of fact, we have us, just to be clear, the new LTE release, we have a bonus disc that's all improvisations, but it's only a tiny, tiny piece of what we actually did, right?
It's 1 hour. It's about an hour's worth of excerpts from all the jams we did. We probably did about, I don't know, 4 or 5 different half-hour jams or whatever. So we just pulled excerpts from them for the bonus disc. But yeah, I mean, that's great stuff to listen to, But there's probably a smaller market for people that have the tolerance for that kind of stuff. But it really shows our 4 personalities. You could really hear all 4 of us just reacting and speaking to each other musically. And I love Tony's such a great improviser as well. He's got like that, you know, he's got all this bag of toys and sound effects and different instruments that he'll go from instrument to instrument on whenever we're improvising, and he'll come up with some sound like on the, you know, the bowed upright bass, which will just, you know, take us to another world, and then we start going with him. So it's such a cool part of the band.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many things that I want to talk about, but I also want to take some questions from people out there, and they have a lot of them. So maybe we will take a break from our discussion to listening to what their questions are. So let's see. Kyle is asking, what was your favorite moment when you shared the stage together? Do you want to field that?
You mean, does that mean like at Cruise to the Edge? I assume
favorite moment when we I would say in general, I guess, you know.
Well, I mean, we're talking in general, it's the improv moments. You know, I love that aspect, like we're talking about. If the question is geared more specifically towards us playing together for the first time in Cruise to the Edge, I mean, that to me was just so special. Getting to play. You know, we had been talking for years and stayed in touch, and you know, but we hadn't actually played together until Cruise to the Edge. You know, 7 or 8 years later, and you know, to actually be playing with you again, and we had Eric Gillette and Connor Green from Haken joining us for that stuff. It was heartwarming. I loved and everybody I think felt the genuine love we have for each other. You know, personally, you know, just coming out and giving you a big hug, and it was just, you could feel a breath, like a sigh of relief, like, oh, okay, all is right in the world, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like when when our situation happened where you left, and it was, you know, tense. Of course, it was tense because of everything. But I mean, there's a reality, and I would tell people this. They would say, "Oh, have you spoken to Mike Portnoy? What's going on with that?" I would tell people that, you know what, I traveled the world. With this, talking about you, with Mike Portnoy, we've had so many experiences together, fun stuff, music stuff, more experiences together than with anybody else on this planet. I mean, when we go to the next dimension, this is a reality, you know?
You're eating every meal together, you're sitting on the bus together, you're sitting on planes and airports together. It's in dressing rooms together. We live together. You know, it's.
So whatever happens, you know, you cannot take that away from me. You know, you just can't. It was too much time, too much fun, too much music, too much emotion that we shared, and we were put on this planet for a limited amount of time, and that's just like a reality. So I value that. Yeah, you know, that to me is like a core kind of I get emotional having you here and thinking about that. You know, as I was emotional when we went through all our changes with the whole Dream Theater thing and I mean, it's deep, you know, it's not something that I take lightly, this kind of a relationship.
I agree. I mean, there's so much history there, and life's too short to hold on to grudges. I mean, it was a difficult period for all of us to go through and adjust to, but, you know, I'm so glad that after the smoke cleared, our friendships are still there, and you know, that I'm still friends with you and with John. I even saw John Myung yesterday. Well, you know, he lives right down the block from me. I don't know if people know that, but I literally just saw him coming out of his driveway yesterday. And, you know, and those are relationships that they don't just go away because of the split that happened. And to me, you know, on one level, doing LTE together with you and John and Tony, it's so great on a musical level, and it's so great on a personal level. But I'm also happy for the fans that they could see that we could still be friends, and we still have a history together, and we still love each other, and we could still make music together, and that doesn't go away, you know. And I think I'm happy to see how happy everybody is that we're doing it together again.
Yeah,
you know?
and they can really enjoy that really unique chemistry that we have and we have with those other guys. Yeah. I mean, that connection, certainly the one you have with John Petrucci, is beyond words. I mean, it's a bond that just is, incredibly deep, and and the connection we have with Tony through working with him is just a wonderful musical connection. And personally, I mean, there is magic there. There's no doubt. It was and it still is a really, really interesting, magical connection between people. And I was thinking about it this morning as I was kind of getting my head together to do this, and I was thinking that, there's to have that kind of magic, like a chemistry like that, and it's kind of like each person brings in a very unique kind of not only ability but just like personal energy about it. And when I think about us in Liquid Tension, or I think about you and like all the people you work with, all the interesting, talented people, everybody has like there's a role in the different groups, and we can keep that part of our thinking to LTE. But it's real. Like I come in, we're all very different people. Like you come in with an absolute set of skills, things that you're like that you really specialize in, and a lot of those things the other guys in the group don't have. Right. Well, and I come in with my, whatever, my musicality that in my way that the other guys don't have, but it all blends together so beautifully. And it's just so great to have the opportunity to share that and to enjoy it, ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's no doubt. We knew that chemistry from the first time we worked with you. The first time John and I worked with you was when you almost, we asked you to join the band after the Awake album. So it started then, but then once we made the LTE albums, we knew the chemistry was there. And then once you came into Dream Theater, we had 10 years of that chemistry in Dream Theater. And there's no question. It's a great chemistry, and it would have been a shame to never have been able to reunite and tap into that again. So right. I'm so glad that here we are, Yeah,
and one of the reasons I'm glad, and this is a confession, but one of the reasons that I'm glad that we're doing LTE again is because sometimes I'll play an idea, like in Dream Theater these days, and like people look at me like I'm from the planet Mars, and I know that if I would have played that, if I play that idea and you're in the room, at least you've heard music that you could say, oh, that's like
right.
Gentle Giant, or that's like a Zappa thing. I like that. Yeah. Now I've got to kind of like maybe play it again, hope
right.
that it like sinks in, because they're looking at me like, what is that? So, and it's funny after all these years to, still be different enough musically that somebody, people
right.
in the same band can be like, what the hell are you doing?
Right. Well, even in Dream Theater, we all had our different personalities, and we all brought in different influences and different, different kind of forms of expression and characteristics and personality traits into the melting pot. That's what being in a band is all about, really.
Totally. So let's do another question. Let's see. Dave is saying, are promoters pinging you guys yet for possible resumption of touring in the fall? Fauci seems optimistic about some capacity by then. Would love to see a TA-LTE double bill.
Oh,
boy.
No, thank you. Yes, I would love to play shows, but not a double bill with LTE and no, that'll kill me.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, to answer the question, I mean, inevitably everybody's asking, is LTE going to play live? And I think it's the same answer that we've been saying for years about making another studio album. It's like, I think we all would love to. It's just easier said than done. I think that the pandemic allowed us to be able to get into the studio to finally make another record. Because of the scheduling, we were all home. I think the scheduling is a big part of whether or not we could ever play live shows as well. Because, once the world does reopen, all of our other bands have makeup shows. I know Dream Theater has shows that just haven't been played yet. And it's the same with me with a lot of my bands. And Tony's got that with Crimson. So I think we need to just kind of see how the chips fall. And if we can play, we surely would love to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's another good one. You'll like this one. Oscar is saying, and this is a question directed to you. He says, how did you get the idea to create LTE?
Well, it started, I had done a Rush tribute album for Magna Carta. And back in the mid-'90s, Magna Carta was the up-and-coming prog label. I don't think Inside Out existed yet, or they were just starting. So Magna Carta asked me to do a Rush tribute, and it was me and Billy Sheehan. Long story short, that opened up a relationship with Magna Carta, and after that, they said, hey, do you want to do like some sort of side project. And none of us in Dream Theater had ever done anything outside of Dream Theater yet at that point. So I started thinking, like, what would be my dream lineup? And I knew I wanted to work with you, Jordan, because, you know, we wanted you in Dream Theater, and for reasons that, you know, you've said you just weren't ready personally. You know, I think one of your daughters was just born. But in any case, I knew I still wanted to work with you because I knew how talented you were. And if we couldn't do it in Dream Theater at that point, it's like, well, maybe we could do this one-off album, you know. And I always wanted to work with Tony, so Tony got thrown into the mix as well. And then, you know, the story is, from my perspective, there was a few different guitar players I was thinking about. Ultimately, none of them ever worked out. And then Marlene suggested, well, what about John? And I was like, well, I kind of wanted this to be separate from Dream Theater. But sure enough, you know, I was like, well, yeah, let's give it a shot. And then, you know, once John was on board, this became LTE. And I know from John's perspective, he was also being asked to maybe do something with Magna Carta as well. And then I think once this idea came about, he just jumped on board with us, and then LTE was born. And then after 2 albums of this, you came into Dream Theater, and, you know, the rest is history. But yeah, that's kind of the origins of it.
It's so amazing that, you know, if any of those other guitar players had maybe said yes, then it's quite possible that I would have never joined Dream Theater.
Yeah, totally.
Because I think John, well, you know the story better than me, but I think John was more having a little harder time with the idea of change, you know, maybe bringing me in, even though obviously we got along musically. So if I didn't get to work with him, it probably would have been even harder to convince him that things needed to change.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it was the fact that John and I felt such a great chemistry with you from those 2 albums. And Dream Theater was going through a very turbulent time during that period as well, and we knew things had to change. So between those 2 coming together at that moment in time, we knew inevitably, you know, we really wanted you in Dream Theater. But you're right. If John wasn't part of LTE from the beginning, you know, our lives would be dramatically different right now. So yeah.
So really, it was whatever guitar player said he couldn't do it, or whatever. We have them to thank.
Exactly.
And Marlene to thank for saying, "Hey, get John to do it."
Yeah.
It's crazy how life works. Hey, I want to do a very quick shout out for Oscar, who is asking me to do a shout out to the Colombian DT fan club. So hello, Colombian Dreamers. Yeah.
And Mike too.
Can
Mike do a shout out?
Oh, yeah.
Mike do a shout? Yeah, he can do a shout out.
Hello to the Colombian Dreamers.
That's the official shout out. Do you have a kazoo or anything like that? You make it like a or anything like. It feels like you should have a noise-making device. The
only thing I have is a Frank Zappa Halloween stick drive.
Perfect.
And I have a HAL 9000.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Open the pod bay doors, Dave.
Awesome. I have another question from Paul. Paul, who plays guitar in Carl Palmer's band, is a good friend of mine. He plays guitar like nobody else. He's amazing.
Yeah, I know Paul. He played with Neil Morse as well.
Awesome. So Paul's asking, did you notice any differences in each other's playing for LTE3? Any improvements or additions? Do you want to tackle that first? I can answer, I guess.
I would say no differences musically, but I could see subtle differences personally. I think musically we all have our style. You know, so we know, you know, how we all play together. So to be honest, I didn't notice any playing differences. It felt like immediately exactly where we left off. But I think the personality differences, you know, I could feel a little bit, especially the dynamic between John and I think, because, you know, when we left off with me in Dream Theater, there was a certain dynamic and a power structure, whereas that kind of, after all these years of me not being in Dream Theater, is kind of like we had to relearn our places. You know, it's weird because time is a weird thing, and I think I've mellowed with age. I think I used to be a lot more controlling, both in LTE and in Dream Theater. I think maybe there were even aspects of LTE and Dream Theater where John, you know, would step back in those days, and I would oversee them. Whereas now, I think John has upped his leadership role with all the years in Dream Theater. So I think there was a level of that I needed to kind of respect
Mm-mm.
in 2020.
Yeah.
And, for me, I also, having collaborated with so many bands, Transatlantic Flying Colors, Sons of Apollo, Winery Dogs, Metal Legions, I had all these experiences of collaborating and being a team player that I think my control level has come down through the years. So we kind of had to find the comfortable footing in LTE 2020. But I think it felt very natural.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your perspective on?
Well, first
on
of all,
that?
that's so interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize how many steps it is, how many decisions go into making a professional release. Whether it's a transatlantic release or an LTE or a Dream Theater, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and and the talents that it takes to make those happen, or even the interests, usually for the most part go beyond most people in bands. That's why those things can get difficult. That's why bands can't get the job done. That's why they don't get careers. A lot of these kind of things are just not things that even come naturally to a lot of musicians, or they don't want to do it, or they can't do it, or they don't have the talent. So you realize, like when I work with you, when I work with John, there's a lot of stuff that you guys do that you really excel at, and that is super important. And I will say that, we, like in LTE, what I noticed is that, you guys still have that kind of amazing talent to do what you do, but as you yourself said, you do it with this kind of ease and grace. It's not that you don't do the same stuff that you did years ago when you were like kind of more into the control aspect. You still, like, guys, I'll deal with the order of the songs. I can go through the jams and I can pick out the good parts. But now you're like, I got in a very general way, like, oh guys, what do you think? You cool with this? And it's very, very accommodating to everybody and making sure that there's a nice vibe. And that's that's great. It's just a nice place to be.
I felt. I had to. Well, first of all, I think I naturally have calmed with age, and like I said, with all these experiences of the last 10 years. But I think another thing was I needed to respect yours and John's dynamic, especially because we hadn't played together for all these years, and we were recording in your Dream Theater's studio. So I wanted to, I needed to be respectful of your world that you've carried on without me. And I wanted to be respectful of that and your relationship together. And I wanted, you need to feel out where we're at this point in our lives. Yeah. But it really didn't even need to be discussed or thought about because it all just felt so natural.
By talking about it, it's almost making it seem like it was not that smooth. But the reality wasn't. Yeah, all those things are true, but it all just kind of like happened.
It's like it's in the back of your head. You want to be respectful and it didn't need to even be talked about or thought about because once we're together, it just was so natural and just a continuation.
Yeah. But I do, just for some perspective and information, I do remember when we sat down at the Dream Theater headquarters at the table and we were talking about getting the album done, and you were like, "Do you mind if I just kind of take care of these things?" Certain things with the record company and all that, and just things that needed to happen. And of course, I'm like, no, please,
Right.
And it wasn't like you were saying, I want to be the producer of this album. You were like, hey guys, I'd like to take care of these things because you enjoy it and you have a lot of experience with those kind of things.
And I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with it. I don't want to, like when we made the first two LTE albums, I was kind of overseeing everything, and it wasn't even like discussed. Whereas this time, you want to make sure. Hey, is everybody cool with this? Everybody comfortable with this? What does everybody's roles want to be? So it needed to be discussed just to establish it. But once everybody was cool and comfortable and easygoing, then
it was easy.
It never had to be discussed,
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's see. So that was we got started with that whole discussion based on Paul's thing. Yeah. So now Matt Johnson is has become a very good friend of mine. He also helps me with my marketing stuff. Great guy. He has a very important question, and it's from his dog Atlas. And he says, "How is Mickey Portnoy's recovery going?" He wants to know.
I wish I could bring him down right now, but he's great. Well, he's a cancer survivor. He got last year. We found out that he had cancer, and he got through it with flying colors. He's doing great now, but now he's just dealing with a back injury, so he has to take it easy for these couple weeks. But yeah, he's doing great. I'll tell you the one great thing about this past year being at home is being with the family. I mean, we're making each other crazy. I've never been home for a year, much less even a few months at that point. Right. But getting to be home with the whole family and especially Mickey, I don't know if Mickey's going to understand once I go back on the road again. I think he just got used to me being home all year.
Yeah, that's nice. Let's see. So that was Matt's important question. And Kenny, hello Kenny, is just wondering, here's his question. When Tony uses the Chapman Stick, does it change the way you guys write or perform together? Well, I mean, Tony is so unique, and he's got a certain sound on the Chapman Stick, and I think he actually picks it up for certain kinds of things. It's two things. Either he initiates something on the stick that inspires us, and we kind of take that road, or we're into a certain kind of groove, and he goes, you know what, this would be really, really cool on the stick. I think that's kind of the way that it works for all of us. Anything to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I think when we're writing, a lot of times I'll see him pick up the stick or pick up the bass. Like he's trying to find, what instrument should I play this section on? Yeah. And like you said, sometimes his instrument will inspire us, or sometimes he'll gravitate to a certain instrument to try to play whatever we're working on. So, but yeah, all those different sounds and flavors coming out of his world is just always so cool, and hearing him play, it's like, oh my God, like I'm here, every time he's playing the stick, it's like, oh my God, I think of like Thila Hunginjid or Elephant Talk or whatever. It's like, that's the guy and that's the instrument that made those sounds. Or even when he picks up his bass, it's like, wow, that sounds like something off a Peter Gabriel album or Paul Simon or John Lennon. I mean, Tony's got so much history. The guy's played with everybody from Pink Floyd to Yes to John Lennon to, Crimson and Gabriel. It's like, it's such an honor to even play with the guy.
It really, really is. And he's just like, when you listen to him and the way he so naturally puts together chords, you have basic chords in a progression, and he just does these special things you don't need to tell him anything. He just does it. It's incredibly musical. It's just a big smile.
And I love that he's got two sides. Like there's two on the main disc of LTE3. There's one kind of mini jam called Liquid Evolution, which is kind of like an osmosis vibey thing. And you could hear him playing the bass. I think he's playing the upright bass on that, the fretless upright bass. So he could tap into that real pocket groove. But then you hear like mine and his duet on this album. And it's just this big, fat, distorted, evil. It sounds like a evil frog. And it's like, how is this like 75-year-old man making this most dirtiest, most evil, big, huge sounding sound coming out of him?
It's those sounds. Every time I hear those sounds, I'm like, what the hell is that? It's just like the most outrageous sounds. Wait till you guys hear this. It's really. It's Tony Levin. It's a part of who he is. It's really crazy. I have a quick question for you, and then I'll get back to the questions from the patrons. I was thinking, as I said, about all the interesting people that you work with. And you're so lucky, because I don't know anybody else who works with that many amazing, talented musical people. I mean, it's really a privilege to get that kind of. It is.
It's an honor for me. I have a lot of gratitude for it.
So it's I guess I'm interested, because you work with so many people. Like we've talked about Tony a little bit, but maybe I am curious, when you think about in this world of all these people that you work with, all super talented, when you work with like LTE with John and I, what are the attributes that might even stand out? Like, what is it about John, maybe not even musically or personally, what is it about me that kind of are interesting to you?
Well, first and foremost, there's a major, major personal and musical history between the three of us that the only other person in my life that I could really put on the same level, other than John Mayung as well, and James, but the people I work with now, I have a deep history like that with Neil Morse as well. Neil and I have done 25 studio albums together. We're in 4 different bands together. So other than Neil, really that history with you and John is deep of a history as you can have. So when I get to work with you guys, it's just such a natural built-in chemistry. And like you said earlier, you know, we lived together for so many years. We grew up together. Our families grew up together, especially John and I. You know, we met the first week in college, you know, him and John Myung as well. So we were teenagers. I was 17 years old when I met those guys. Wow. And now our kids are, in their 20s and older than that. And, our wives were in a band together. And then, same with you, there's so much history. But as far as the musical attributes, I mean, the thing is with you, the two of you guys, I know that there's no limitations. I know that you could play absolutely anything. There's no limitations to what you could do. And I think John's the same on guitar. So if I'm working with other bands, let's say I'm working with Royna, in Transatlantic, or working with, Steve Morse in Flying Colors, or working with Bumblefoot in Sons of Apollo, or Derek Sherinian in Sons of Apollo. They're all very, very different types of players. But I think what you and John bring to the table is a complete, limitless. There's no, the sky's the limit. So there's no idea that you can't execute, or that John can't execute. And that also gets the most out of me as well, because in some of my other bands, as much as I love what I do in the Winery Dogs and all these other things, there are certain musical limitations because, different players play different ways. Whereas I think you and John really are just as, the cream of the crop, and it gets more out of me. It makes me have to rise to the occasion. It makes me have to up my game. What I'm doing in Flying Colors is sometimes a little bit more pop oriented or alternative oriented. So I don't need to be so technical. But when I play with you guys, I have to, we have to all kind of work on that same technical level. So it makes me have to rise to that as well.
I guess part of that is the reason that LTE is so popular, and the Dream Theater stuff that we did together also, because there's unique kind of explosion of chemistry and musical ideas. It's interesting because we live inside of our own brain, so it's hard to as much as we've spent time together, my asking you that question was really interesting because we don't often talk about things from that perspective.
Right. I have to say, with all the love and respect to you and John, I think these last 10 years stepping outside of Dream Theater for me has been a great experience to challenge, to work with all of these other players, to make, be in multiple bands with Billy Sheehan, to be in multiple bands with Neil Morse, and work with Steve Morse, and all these other players that I've gotten to work with, and do the thrash metal stuff with Metal Allegiance and Alex Skolnick. So as much as I really cherish and value our relationship, me, you, and John, whether it be in LTE or Dream Theater, it has been a great experience for me these past 10, 11 years to explore other things and branch out and work with other personalities, other type of players. And, my love for music is very broad. I love everything from Pantera to the Beatles and everything in between. So it's also been an opportunity for me to explore those different places musically.
Yeah, and it's great because it gives you a lot of perspective. I always find when I work with, if I'm working with accompanying a singer, or I'm doing some classical thing with somebody, all those things are such learning experiences. It's all, really.
And also you have to wear different hats. Like there's some situations where I'll steer the ship. There's other situations where it's a total collaboration, and all the members have an equal say, and all the members are overseeing stuff. So you have to be a real team player. And then there's other situations where I'm just a hired gun, playing on John's solo album. I was there to do a service for him. Same with, if I'm playing on a Big Elf album, or if I'm playing on, one of Neil's solo albums, I'm there to provide a service and not provide, not give any input, so you also have to wear different hats and have different levels of, contributions for different situations.
Like the time I thought I was going to change David Bowie's world, And I walked in there with one synthesizer that did all sound effects, and one with orchestral effects, and one with ambient sounds. And I thought, oh man, this is my big chance to like take this icon and really move him to the next dimension. And I came in and he said to me, I want the keyboard parts to be kind of like I played them, but a little smoother. Okay, well there goes that fantasy.
Yeah.
I had a big lesson in being a studio musician. It was a great experience. But
I love that album. Actually, there's a song on that album. I'm not sure if you played on. There's one song that he wrote for Uncle Floyd. I think it's called "Waste Away" or something away. I don't
Slip
have
Away. That's
Slip
my
Away.
favorite song, and you know the story of that. I must have
song.
told you. So I walk in the. I'll tell quickly. There's a lot of questions, but I walk in the morning because I was living up at that studio. You remember when I did it because it was around the time we did 6 Degrees.
6 Degrees, exactly.
So I walk in the morning. There's the two pianos in this room. The guy's tuning the upright piano. There happens to be a very nice like baby grand piano there too. So, and I was told today was going to be the piano track, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to play the nice Steinway piano. So, but the guy is tuning this other thing with the upright, looked like a barroom piano. So I find out pretty quickly that David actually wants me to play this piano that has his special tuning on it. So I start playing the song, Slip Away, and Tony Visconti and David come in. They say, no. It's not totally doing it. I'm thinking they don't like my playing or something. No, they said, no, what you're playing is fine, but the sound, can you play the baby grand piano? Start playing that. They come in again. No, it's not quite right. It's not right. So I'm like, well, what do you want to do? These are the only two pianos here. So they ended up moving the upright piano right up against the grand piano and making sure the lid was completely off of it and taping the sustain pedal down. Right?
Wow.
And putting the mics right up against the upright, the open part of the upright. So when I played the baby grand, they were capturing the resonance. There was a little bit of the room of the sound, but they were also just capturing the resonance of the upright. And that's the sound. When you listen to that song again, that's what I did.
Wow.
That's what we did. And they said it was an old Brian Eno trick. That they learned.
Well, I love that song. It's one of my favorite Bowie songs, and the other being "Life on Mars," which Rick Wakeman played on. So you're in great company.
You know what's funny? I just thought, I played "Life on Mars," but for some reason it never struck me to do like a piano arrangement of "Slip Away," which I played the piano on. I should do that.
You should. It's such a beautiful song. I love it.
Anyway. What were we talking about right before that? We were going somewhere with it. I got totally sidetracked. I guess we'll go back to questions. So, all right, this is a good one. James, hello, James. He says, could Mike speak with regard to compositional approach and his personal influence from Neil Peart, I guess.
Well, I think there are two different roles, actually, because my influence from Neil is that pretty much of a drummer, like he was one of my biggest drum heroes. So he shaped the way I play. He shaped the way I build a drum set. He shaped the way I phrase things, and phrasing things different from verse to verse to chorus to chorus. I mean, Neil played very musical like that, and he was also a lyricist and a great lyricist. So for me as a lyricist, when I was a lyricist in Dream Theater, that was there as well. But my songwriting contributions come more from, for starters, I'm not the sort of person that brings in seeds. Like, for instance, when we did the LTE album this time, you had 1 million seeds, John had 1 million seeds, and then we came together, we would work on them together. That's kind of the way I am in all my bands, like compositionally, whether it be Transatlantic or Flying Colors, or even Dream Theater back when I was still in the band. I wouldn't come in with seeds, but I was more of an arranger type, more of a producer type where, well, hey, maybe we should go to the bridge at this point, or maybe we should change the key to this point or modulate, or let's maybe do a rhythm where you're taking away this beat or adding that beat. But it's my compositional input is more on that level as an arranger producer type. I'm not the type that's coming in with pre-written parts, as you know, Jordan, but it's the same with me and all my bands. So I'm not sure.
That's a great answer. I mean, I tell people when I speak about LTE, and I was reminded of this when we worked together, that one of the skills that like you have and also like John has in a really big way is this kind of architectural skill. like, okay, we're building a song. This is kind of like imagining what it's going to be even before it becomes reality. And then once
Right.
we start putting the pieces together, it's like immediately like, oh, well, that part could go here and we should extend that. And maybe we need another part for a pre this or, whatever. And I appreciate that because that's, my kind of musical thinking is almost like linear in a way. I'm not thinking so much in that kind of architectural way, which is
Right.
so important. It's not, it's a real skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, no doubt. Let's see. So here's another one. Alexander, hello, Alexander. He says, for the uninitiated who wish to be initiated, what is the Zappa album you'd start someone on?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a hard question because his catalog is so deep and diverse. You could go from having a psychedelic album like We're Only in It for the Money, and then the next album is a doo-wop album like Reuben and the Jets, and then the next album's like a fusion album. Next album's an orchestral album. So you can't really just throw a dart at the Zappa dartboard and get what you're looking for. So it really depends on what you're looking for. For me, I love the period between like 73 to 78, which was his more fusion-esque period. That's when, the early albums, like Apostrophe, Overnight Sensation, those are two great starting points, or Roxy and Elsewhere. A little later came when Terry Bozzio joined the band. I love the Chic Your Booty album, Zoodalers, and Joe's Garage, which was Vinnie Colaiuta. So those 5 or 6 right there, that's my favorite era. But like I said, they're all so different. So you can't really just pull one out and it's going to represent him. It's the big catalog that represents him.
And which album was Uncle Remus on?
That was Apostrophe.
Oh, okay.
That's a great album.
I used to play that song.
I could picture you singing that.
Whoa! Are we moving too slow? Are those the words?
Have you seen
us, Uncle Remus?
But that's also the album with Don't Eat the Yellow Snow and Cosmic Debris, and that's a great one. You can't go wrong with that album.
Pretty sharp in those clothes. Yes, you do.
Yeah,
I like singing that. I don't know why. I don't know why that one fits into my groove, but it seems.
Yeah, that's your thing.
And I do Jethro Tull pretty well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you do a good Ian Anderson.
I have to be in the mood. It's got to be late night on the tour bus to make that happen.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, next question. James is at. Wait, James asked. This is the second one. I'm going to go to somebody else because I don't know how much time we have here. Scott is saying, "How is it possible that you play things like the odd meters in the Dance of Eternity? I saw your video on it and it blew my mind. Do you play it from memory?" Well, I could say, of course we do. Yes. How is it possible that we play things like odd meters? How's it possible, Mike? How do you do that?
Well, you can't just jump into it. For starters, like I see a lot of kids today, they're growing up in the YouTube age, and they film themselves playing in their bedroom, and they'll be filming themselves playing the Dance of Eternity. All right, so it's one thing to be able to just physically learn how to play something like that, but I think it's more important to understand how such stuff like that was written and why it was written, and understand those figures and the odd time signatures. Because when we write something like that, we're not just randomly slopping things together. You need to be able to know what a 5 feels like, and a 7 feels like, and a 9 feels like, and we spent a lot of time writing A Dance of Eternity. So it's not like it's one thing to just learn. I mean, anybody could learn Stairway to Heaven, but it's another thing to write it,
Right, sure.
And and you're writing something like Dance of Eternity, you need to have an understanding of that type of music, odd time signatures, polyrhythms. And I think in our case, we all were, well schooled in that. Myself, John, and John all went to Berkeley. You went to Juilliard, so we all know that stuff. We know about time signatures and how to write like that. So it helps to have that kind of understanding. But when you spend that much time working on such a meticulous piece like that, then it's second nature. So I didn't have to read it ever again. Once we wrote and recorded it, it's in the memory bank for life. That's the way it is for me. I know it's a little different for you, Jordan. I know you like notation and you use that, but
Sure. What was I going to say? something about that, but I don't remember. So it's time to move on to the next question. Now, this is a good one for you. Gustav is saying, has Mike pre-ordered the new plastic Ono Band Super Deluxe box?
Oh yeah,
I can answer that. Of course he has. What do you think? This is,
and I think it's now coming out the same day as LTE. When the LTE date got pushed, I think it got pushed to the same date as the plastic Ono Band box. But I've been waiting for that one for a long time. I can't wait.
Oh, I know what I was going to say to the other one. Like when I got out of Juilliard and started to get into progressive rock, I started to follow. I've never followed a band around. But one band that I saw multiple times was Gentle Giant, because I absolutely love them. And so I was like eating like odd meters like for breakfast. So, you get to a point where like you're thinking in 7 and it's just so natural. It feels like, and then you go, oh my God, I'm like in 7 here. You don't even realize it. And then maybe 4/4 is, can be challenging. But then I was also going to say to you, as much as I love odd meters, I'm still having a little trouble absorbing 23/8.
23/8?
23/8. Like I'm still learning. Yeah. When I go to Dream Theater writing sessions these days, I feel like I'm going back to math class. Because I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck is 23/8.
Well, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
You need to. Here's the thing, people. You can't just start playing 28. You need to subdivide. You need to find a comfortable subdivision.
I need to. Some people I know don't seem to, and I don't get it.
Well, I don't think in terms of big numbers like that. You could say every time signature is just 1/8 or 1/4.
Or 2, right.
Yeah, well, everything is
Yeah. A wise
everything
man
is a 1 or a 2.
But a wise man once told me that the rhythm is all 2s and 3s. But I guess you could say 1, 2, or 3. That wise man was Rod Morgenstein. But there's different schools of thought, obviously. No, I failed math, so I'm not good at 23/8. But I'm good at some of the lower number. I can do 7 and 5 and things like that really, really well.
But it's honestly, I think it's ridiculous to look at something like 28. What are you going to look at something like? Okay, there's a bar of 161. 8. No, it's a matter of just counting bars and counting phrases.
Yeah.
So something like 28. Start in its most basic form, divided by 4s.
But like where are the accents? Like I was looking back at some of the MIDI files when I recorded the latest Dream Theater stuff, and because I didn't have anybody, usually I'll have somebody, after we write it, I'll have somebody transcribe it, because it really helps me to see what it was, and I can then record quickly. And in this case, I didn't do that. So all I had were the MIDI files, and we had the sessions, I shit you not, there were like a lot of measures of like 23/8. And I was looking at them and going, what did I play? Where is the beat in this? And God bless Mike Mangini. He's incredible. As we know, he's a great drummer. But I still can't think in 23/8. It's just like really funny.
I don't think see the way I approach it. I would always approach anything like this, even in the Dream Theater days. Like, okay, we have a group of 23, let's say. Yeah. You could phrase it as, let's say, 2 bars of 7 and 1 bar of 8. Let's say I'm doing the math off the top of my head.
Right, sure.
But then maybe I'll phrase it a different way, where I'm playing, 4 rounds of 5 and then a bar of 3. So I think that's one of the fun ways of creating.
Yes.
Where you have a phrase but then everybody breaks it or phrases differently within that. And that's how so much great Dream Theater stuff, at least, when I was there, was created like that. I would create a lot of my drum parts like that. And, like Metropolis Part 1, there were always these bits of 13 or bits of, 19 or whatever. And we would phrase them differently within the band. And that's how something like Dance of Eternity gets written.
Yeah, absolutely. I just for perspective for everybody, I was somebody who first of all, I didn't really go to school because my mother would keep me home to practice and get ready for my Juilliard classes. But when I did go on occasion, I'd be in math and I'd be literally trying to hide, sinking in my seat, hoping that she wouldn't call on me. And it wasn't.
I was good at math.
I bet you were. It wasn't until I was in, I think it was Chile Chile. And I was really, really, I don't get drunk very often, but I had gotten really drunk, and I had gotten, for some reason, John Petrucci was giving me a lesson in math, and it finally sunk in, and I realized that all the 7/8 and 4/4 had to do with math. I didn't. Totally. I never made the connection, and once I understood that, I was like, I don't want to think about it like that because I understand music numbers, but if I start saying that it's the same as that, it'll all, go away.
Different people need to feel things differently. And
Yeah.
so for me, it is about the numbers. To me, like I when I used to do a lot of clinics or instructional videos, I would explain, okay, well, 7/8 is really just a bar 4/4 with one missing eighth note, or you could phrase it in a 3 and a 4, or a 4 and a 3, or a 5 and a 2. You know, to me, I like looking at the odd time signatures in terms of numbers and math. But yeah, I understand it's not the way that everybody wants to approach it.
And
but
and my thing is funny because I love odd meters and I'm pretty good at it. So, and I do it naturally, but if you start thinking about it as math, I start shrinking.
There's
in
a
my
lot.
seat.
There's a lot of people that just feel it. You know, I think there's a lot of bands that play all these riffs in 7 or 9 and 13. They don't even know they're doing it.
They feel it.
You know, I think there's a lot of bands. They probably just, this riff feels like this, and that's it.
Right, exactly. So Raul wants to know, what is the most difficult piece that we've composed together? Wow, there's been a lot of big epics, a lot of pieces. I don't know, something like Dance of Eternity, I would say, is one of the more difficult things. Is there anything else you want to?
I mean, that was the one. I think we wrote it intentionally to just go as far over the top as we could. I mean, we were basing it, on the middle of Metropolis Part 1. Has this crazy instrumental section. So when we were writing Scenes from a Memory, I remember we were in the middle of the album and we was like, okay, well, let's do what we did with Metropolis Part 1. Like in the middle of this giant piece, we need this crazy instrumental. It was kind of serving the same purpose as the middle of Metropolis Part 1. So yeah, I think we purposely went over the top with that. But what would be some other ones? I mean, there's moments in the middle of Octavarium. There's moments in The Presence of Enemies or Count of Tuscany. It's been years since I've heard that some of these songs or played them, but they're obviously a lot fresher to you. You've probably continued playing them through the years.
And somebody asked me to do a cameo playing, what was it, like Dark Eternal Night the other day?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, because the middle section of that is pretty intense, right?
I think we always knew, okay, now at this part of the song, we need some crazy stuff. And, people are going to hear a lot of that on the new LTE album. I mean, the opening track, Hypersonic, is that it was written with that in mind, that literally you hit play and similar to like Paradigm Shift or Acid Rain, you're just going to get steamrolled. And that's the way the opening track is on this new LTE album. And I think we purposely did not put that out as a single just yet because it would have been maybe too overwhelming for people that waited for all these years to hear something. But that's one of the tracks on the album, and also the big 13-minute Key to the Imagination also has some crazy moments in there as well. But usually we're intending to write crazy parts when we do that.
Yeah, we're just going.
That's
for it.
The goal.
But everybody, especially young musicians, old musicians out there, should know that one of the things about the way we make music and the thing that we value in music is the melody and the emotion and the simplicity. And yes, we like to have fun playing all kinds of crazy meters, but we know from our hearts and we know from experience that also you need to have music that's just going to resonate with people. And that's one of the reasons that I think we've had success in this crazy world. You think about, we know incredible musicians that tend to like sail right by any like emotion or realizing that most people can't even follow, odd meters and that kind of stuff. It's, yes, have your fun, dance of fingers, dance of the sticks, whatever it is, but remember what's most important to people. So that's my little bit of advice. Before the next question, which is, Mike, did you ever consider sampling one of your monster kits and creating a drum virtual instrument?
Actually, I was asked to recently do that by Jerry Guidros, who has been my engineer for almost everything I've done post Dream Theater. He's done all my Flying Colors, Transatlantic, Neil Morse Band, Sons of Apollo, Winery Dogs, Metal Allegiance. He's engineered pretty much all those albums that I've done all these years. And he approached me recently because he had samples from every one of those sessions. He approached me about the idea of maybe doing such a thing. And I gave him the green light. I was like, go for it. So I'm not sure the status of that project. I'm not even sure if he's still continuing to look into it. But it is something that he brought up to me. And I said, be my guest. So we'll see if that comes. And also Matt Halpern from Periphery has talked to me about that kind of stuff as well. Right. But I told him I had already kind of committed to Jerry Guidro. So we'll see if Jerry ever does anything with the idea.
Cool. Let's see. Lacerdax, I have to learn how to say his name better, I guess. Question for us both. Favorite song you guys did together? Wow, how do you? I always have trouble with those kind of questions because I feel like everything we create are our children.
Of course.
It leads me. I can tell a funny story, and it is one of the favorite things that we've ever done together for me. Which is, and I share this with people because it's interesting. You know, I'm into all these different controllers and all the crazy gadgets and all that kind of stuff. And when I brought my Continuum for the first time in the studio, I knew that, you know, I was really greatly interested in it and I wanted to play it, but I wasn't really sure what to do with it in Dream Theater. And I remember being in the studio together, and you always were kind of interested in all my, you know, craziness with all these things. And so you were like, one day you were like, Jordan, you should play that thing. Like, get that thing out and play it. I didn't even know if you knew like what it could do or what it was, but I think to you it was probably just another one of my crazy things. So when you said that, I was like, oh wow, yeah, I should play that. But then I was thinking, what the hell should I do on it? Like, because it's pretty esoteric in, you know, the concept. And then I connected it very quickly to the fact that I had just finished making a whole bank of lead sounds for Roland for one of their synths, and I thought, oh man, I could control the lead sound with the Continuum. So walked into the studio and hooked the thing up, and it sounded awesome. We were like, oh my God. And you were like, that thing's amazing. Probably, yeah. I don't think you knew where the sound was coming from or cared. But I'm running my finger on it, and it sounded really cool. And so I ended up using it on Octavarium, as well as playing a little bit of lap steel, too, which was a whole adventure. I haven't played it in years. But that's one of my, you know, one of the favorite things. Well, little story.
I don't know if you still use the Continuum, but once you brought it in, you ended up using it a lot on, you know, because to me it looked like it was almost like the concept of a fretless keyboard almost, you know, and you ended up playing a lot of melodies, and even using it on some of the older songs live.
Right.
I always loved that.
Yeah. I think I played the big solo, what was it, at the end of Dark Eternal Night?
Yeah.
Continuum. If you guys search Rudess Continuum on YouTube, that's like one of the ones.
But I think one of the first times you used it on an older song, I think you used to use it on some of the melodies in Peruvian Skies, you know, so there was an example of like live, you were utilizing it for one of the older songs to play like lead melodies and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
As far as my favorite songs, like that we did together, I mean, it's like you said, it's you can't pick a favorite child. They all mean something different to you, but a couple of the special ones that come to mind are some of the probably less thought of songs, like Disappear, the last song on the first disc of 6 Degrees. I love that song, and we only played it live, I think, a couple of times ever, but it was so much fun exploring the sonic possibilities. The whole 6 Degrees album, we got really into exploring sounds and recording things differently and strangely and experimenting. And Disappear had such a great soundscape to it. I still hold that song very, very fondly as one of my favorite, like, forgotten songs.
Yeah, it was very special. I remember that actually creating that kind of backwardsy, trippy piano and playing it for you, and you go, that's good. Or it was a really cool cello sound. I don't remember what instrument it was that I made it on. But we were kind of into that, like, Radiohead type of feel for exploration, and I love that, because being the, you know, sonic guy that I am, that was really fun. But do you remember, like, in that album, like, I had at one point like all my keyboards like leaning up against the wall of the control room, because we were doing the overture, trying to put everything together. And the way that we ran kind of like the orchestral sound was that I'd be like having MIDI data go to like the Kurzweil in that corner, and then I'd be sending it to the Korg thing over there. And it was like literally keyboards like everywhere. Of course, nowadays it's all on a computer, but just have memories of all these keyboards like lined up along the walls. Yeah.
That was a great one. And another one is the Octavarium title track. I love that one. That was our first time writing like a big 25-minute song since you were in the band. I don't know if we had any other like 25-minute songs before then. And so we went in with the headspace, like, let's write like a modern day Change of Seasons. We had a Change of Seasons, but we wanted to write something like that now with you in the band. And I really loved all the different passages in that song and the way we brought a lot of themes back, and the ending is so majestic. So that's another one that comes to mind as well as another favorite.
We had Mika's animation in there as well.
Yeah.
Right. I finished. That was so fun. And that makes me remember the first day that we played Change of Seasons, though, together. I think we were in Europe, and you were like, I don't know, you probably remember it better than I do, but I remember something about we arrived at this like big show, maybe it was a festival or something. You were like, okay, let's play Change of Seasons today. And I was like, okay. And I kind of had it maybe scored a little bit, but we had never played it. But I was like, I guess I can. And we walked on and we played it. And at the end,
sorry.
You were like, Jordan, good job, man. High five. You did it.
Sorry, man.
That?
I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, maybe you might hate me for it, but I think the fans love me for it. So, I apologize to you, but you're welcome to the fans.
It makes a good story. All right, so we're coming to our conclusion. We're going to stop after a few more questions because I can't keep Mike here all day. He's got a lot of bands. He's got a lot of stuff to do, and he's got a family. So, all right, so let's see. Next question. Alexander is saying, this is from Mike. He says, are you a fan of Billy Joel? If so, do you have a favorite song of his?
Yeah, I love Billy Joel. I love the Stranger album. So Scenes from Italian Restaurant is always a favorite. It was kind of like a pop guy doing a prog kind of mini suite. And actually, nice Dream Theater trivia. We actually did a medley back in the early days, when we were still Majesty, we did a medley. We had a little bit of Angry Young Man. We played a little bit of, we covered a bit of that in the early days in one of our live shows. Yeah. But yeah, I love Billy Joel. He's my sister's biggest hero. Like for me, the Beatles are it for me, but for my sister, Billy Joel is her Beatles. And it was back in July of '94. Me and Marlene were getting married, but Billy Joel was playing a local show, and she asked if she could skip the wedding rehearsal to go see Billy Joel. And so I said, yeah, no problem. I understand how important it is to you. And then years later, not a year later, we were in Japan at the same time as Billy Joel, and we got stuck there in the earthquake together. And of course, David Rosenthal is a good friend of ours, and he plays in Billy's band. So I got my sister a poster from the Japanese tour, Billy Joel Japanese tour poster, and Dave had Billy sign it to her. Dear Sam, thanks for missing Mike's wedding rehearsal for me. Love Billy Joel.
Wow, that's great. That's a great story. All right, so James is saying, you guys are surrounded constantly by everything awesome musically. What currently just gets you going when you hear it?
New bands or old music, or
no, exactly. I guess currently meaning new. Yeah, could be anything. I'm trying to think of how I would answer that at the moment. What currently gets me going when I hear it?
Well, I love. I love as far as prog bands. I love everything Haken has been doing for forever, and in the same vein, Caligula's Horse is another great band in that vein, and Leprous is another one in that vein. But my taste also goes to different places because I like a lot of weird pop music as well. So, I might listen to something like the Lemon Twigs or the Licorice Quartet or, something like that, or maybe the Deer Hunter, or Fiona Apple or, I don't know. My taste is pretty broad, so I also like a lot of hardcore stuff, like real heavy stuff like Code Orange or the kind of stuff my son does with his band. So, as you know, Jordan, I always have my ear to the ground. I'm always listening to new bands, and keeping up on stuff.
And I'm kind of diverse like that as well. I mean, in the prog space, I have a young friend named Joe Izzo who's got this group called Arch Echo. That those guys, I don't, you can't really figure out what they're doing. It's so incredible. It's like, what the hell is going on? They're pretty amazing. I also like really gentle, like more mellow stuff, like Sigur Rós or Rose, however you say it. Out of Iceland. I always love the sonics of that music. Think about that a lot. Still go back to my favorites, the classic prog, and listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Of course, Tarkus changed my world, so that is always good. And electronic music, like Aphex Twin, stuff like that. So cutting edge, and continues to be. So yeah, those are some things that rock our worlds. All right, so let's see. We're coming to the end of this now. Mike and Susan Nelson, hey guys, who originally came up with the name Liquid Tension Experiment, and can you explain the liquid tension part?
Do you recall? I think
Wasn't there some book that John, like a metaphysical book that John was reading or kind of saw lying around the studios over there and picked it up, and we got all like the names.
I think that's how we got a lot of the song titles, like Freedom of Speech and Kindred Spirits and Paradigm Shift. We started writing down these phrases that we were seeing in the book. And then at that time, we were also looking for a name. I think, if I remember correctly, I might have the original cassettes from the studio that we weren't even LTE yet. I think it might have been called the Project. Project, or the Millennium Project. I think that was one of the things I suggested, the Millennium Project, because it was coming up towards the end of the 90s, and but that obviously didn't stick, and we just kept searching, and I think Liquid Tension Experiment was like
It was from that book. It was totally.
I think Liquid Intention came from the book, and then we added the.
I remember we were all in that kitchen area of the Millbrook Studios. Yeah. And that's where you had the Kiss drummers' drums in back of you, as we found out recently.
That's right.
Somebody showed me a picture, and they were like, "Why are Kiss?" They asked me, "Why are there the Kiss drummers' drums in back?" I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "But I know who would know." I called you up, and you were like, "Oh yeah, well that's what it was." Right?
Yeah, it's Eric Carr's drums were in the studio in Millbrook with us. Yeah,
so funny. Yeah, two more questions. Andrea says, Mike, I remember watching a behind the scenes, possibly on the first Live at Budokan DVD, where you mentioned you used to collect stuff with the DT logo on it. Does that collection still exist? I can answer that for you, but you go ahead. I get a little tour. That and more.
I mean, as you can see, I still collect everything. But this is the Dream Theater archives right back there. That's pretty much every live show, every studio session, every rehearsal from 1985 to 2010. So yeah, but as you can see, I still collect everything. And let me show you my drum room. What's that?
Danielle is saying, are there any copies? Those are the only copies that exist.
No, God forbid anything was. I'm afraid to have anybody back it up, because then they have access to everything. But this is the drum room, and there's a lot of Dream Theater history in here. Obviously, that's where am I? Everything's backwards because I'm doing it this way. But
yeah,
wait, where am I? I can't figure out. There we go.
I can see the drums.
That's my When Dreaming Day Unite kit that I used on When Dreaming Day Unite and Images and Words. And look at this, my original Majesty kick drum.
Wow.
I mean, that was the same one that I used at Berkeley. And over here, that's my Scenes from Memory kit back there. Everything's backwards. There's the Echo Hill sign from the Scenes from Memory tour. And over here, that's the Systematic Chaos stop sign and Liquid Tension drum head. So, yeah, as you can see, I still collect everything, and there's just so much Dream Theater history in here.
And it's nicely organized too.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome, which is awesome. Yeah, can you come and help me organize my place one day?
It's one of the nice things about the pandemic has been I've been able to organize and deal with all this stuff. Because check this out, Jordan, you'll like this too.
Okay.
Here's some more Dream Theater stuff. This is the actual newspaper and the suicide note from Scenes from Memory that was used in the artwork.
Oh wow,
that's
awesome.
Is getting a glare off.
I see it,
and then
we can see it. Yeah,
this is the original hand drawn Falling Into Infinity cover that Storm Thurgerson submitted to us. And interestingly enough, he sent that as a possible cover, and then that, which we passed on, and he ended up using that for Pink Floyd instead for their greatest hits album.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So my organizational issue right now is I've got keyboards all over the floor because, thankfully people keep sending me lots of keyboards, but I'm like, where do I put them? But I'm on the road to resolving that. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna deal. All right, the final question is from Ray. He says, what's the source or origin of ideas of your songs? How do you start coming up with the theme? Who goes first? I guess I can kind of speak about that. I kind of feel like the way I view the musical ideas or the source, and so I'm thinking more in frequencies rather than necessarily like lyrics. I kind of see myself like with a couple of antennas in my head, and there's all this energy out there, and if I'm kind of an open channel, I can allow it to flow through me, and it comes out as musical thoughts. So, a lot of times the music will flow if there's like a definite emotion going on. I mean, the music, so for me, thankfully, the music is pretty much always flowing, but it flows maybe even a little bit more if I'm really feeling something strongly, whether it's happiness or sadness or super calm or whatever it is. And then I can create a vibe. I can play. And so like what I usually do, like what I did for LTE is, I'll capture that spirit, and I'll sit down and I'll come up with a bunch of seeds. I'll get something like I was on vacation and all of a sudden I had this feeling, and I sat down and I kind of wrote the melody to the song that's called Shades of Hope, which you guys will hear. It's really pretty. Sent it to John, I sent it to Mike, and they were like, it's really, really beautiful. We got to use that. So that's kind of how it happens. That's it. Over to you, buddy.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm not the type that comes in with the seeds. I'm kind of the farmer that waters the seeds, and my role as a compositional collaborator is more of a organizer, an arranger, producer role. Working with the seeds that are brought in by incredible people like you, Jordan. Like when we did LTE, you sent like 30 or 40 different seeds. There was just so much to work with. So it's, my role is kind of
decide what you want to plant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Neil Morse calls me the gleaner. Neil will come in with like hours and hours worth of stuff, but he trusts me to glean through it and then pick and choose. And, he's got a lot of faith and trust in me because he knows that's kind of my thing and that's my strength. So I'm not the type to come in with stuff. The only other thing I would say is, back in the Dream Theater days when I was writing a lot of lyrics, I would spend a lot of time with the melodies. Like anytime I was a song that I was writing lyrics to, in a lot of cases, I would maybe demo it with me singing the parts. So, there was a lot of melodies that needed to be written or parts that needed to be sung. And so inevitably I ended up singing, a lot of that kind of stuff as well. But, that's a whole nother role. And that's one role that I've kind of walked away from since Dream Theater. In Dream Theater, I would write a lot of those lyrics and melody parts and sing. But since then, I've written very, very few lyrics in any of the bands I'm currently a part of. So, but that was an aspect of my songwriting contributions back then.
Beautiful. So, everyone, I think that'll wrap up our session. This has been so amazing. What a great hang. Just enjoyed it so much, Fantastic. Danielle is telling me we should talk about the LTE release dates. Yeah, so right now we are scheduled to release on April 16th, right? That's when it was moved to. And, we are upset that it was delayed a little bit, but at the same time, you guys have waited over 20 years, so it's another couple of weeks. I think you're going to really love it, and I think there's maybe some more goodies coming out to whet your appetite before... I don't know if there's anything we can talk about, actually, but,
Well, there's another video single that's coming out in a few weeks. So, Look forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So, listen, thanks to all the patrons. You guys are awesome. Thanks for being here. And thank you so much, Mike, for making time to hang.
Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. This has been awesome.
And what?
Live stream tomorrow. What is it?
Live stream. And my producer is reminding me of things here. I'm doing a live stream tomorrow.
She's doing her job. That's what they're for.
She knows how to do this. I mean, it's fantastic. We've learned so much. I'm going to be doing a live stream. I'm going to be focusing on this very, very cool synthesizer that right now is on the floor, which will, only because I had nowhere to put it when it just came in the house. I'm going to be focusing on that.
What is it?
The Hydrasynth is an incredible instrument. It's really awesome. It has like wavetable synthesis, and it's just all kinds of cool effects, and it's very, very cool. I'm looking forward to showing you guys that. It's going to be awesome. Mike, if you want, we can jam, but we have to figure out the technology. We'll do that one day, right?
Did I see that you just put out a solo album today? What's up with that?
Do you want to market that? I should talk about that. Well, it was yesterday. My
okay.
patrons knew about it because they actually helped me name some of the songs.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
which I loved because they're really good at that, and they came up with some great names. So this album is it's called A Chapter in Time. It's an album. It's kind of like it was like a musical diary. It's all very kind of trippy, if you will, gentle, thoughtful, calm, ambient piano music. So I would just, in the lockdown, I would literally go out to my studio and I just shape this kind of sound built around a piano sound, and I would just kind of let my emotions flow, and I just play. And so I just went back and just picked the ones that I wanted to represent the time period, A Chapter in Time. And I put it out, actually, I released it yesterday. It's funny because I didn't mean to necessarily release it yesterday, but I'd never published anything myself on Bandcamp. So as I was putting things in, like putting all the songs and uploading, I realized at some point that, oh my God, I just released this. And then I thought, you know what? I've been waiting to release this, so I guess I'll just make it official. It's released. So, I put it up there, and it's I'm just so pleased. I mean, it's probably my calmest album. But yeah. And I was going to say, and it's only on Bandcamp now, because we know that if you put it on Spotify or Apple Music or any of those things, that people certainly listen to music there, but musicians can't make any money. They can't get paid even to pay the expenses back for the recording time or anything. So Bandcamp is a really, really great option for people to put out their music, because you can get something in return.
And I could be wrong. I haven't dealt with Bandcamp, but isn't it every Friday they waive?
Yes.
They waive. So if you really want to support the artists themselves, go get buy your stuff on Fridays, because Bandcamp waives their commission and all the money goes directly to the artist every Friday, I think.
Yeah,
from what
I think
I
you're
understand.
right. And that's cool. And actually, as it worked out, I released my album on a Friday. Hey, I had a real plan there. Anyway, a lot going on. Thank you, buddy. Great to see you. Have a wonderful rest of the day. We appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody.